pushing record there.
Sounds like you're winging it.
What's that?
It sounded like you were winging it.
Well,
Yep.
I'm not going to use any intros. That's why. Like, I'm just going to go raw.
Ooh.
All right. Give me a mic check.
Hello and welcome to DC on RMD Stargirl edition.
All right, here we go. My mind's kind of weird today, so just help me if I get quiet.
Okay.
All right, here we go. All right, hello, welcome everyone to DC on RMD Stargirl edition. You can find this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search DC and RMD Stargirl edition. Or if you want access to all of our DC related content, search for our main feed by simply typing in DC on RMD. Our preferred place for you to listen is iTunes because we need those ratings and reviews. So please be sure to give us a 5-star rating. All right, so we are back continuing our discussion on Season 2 of Stargirl with a breakdown on Episode 2 of Season 2 titled Summer School, Chapter 2. Hello, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing good. This summer school title thing,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think about this?
I'm not quite sure what they're doing because they didn't do this last year.
Okay, because I looked it up when I saw that they were doing this. I was like, did I miss... Because, you know, when you don't leave the show, I really don't care what the shows are actually titled.
Right.
You know, it's one of
Yeah.
those things. Like, you could have been like, this episode was titled episode 2, Poop. And I would have been like, oh, okay. So
Episode 2 titled Poop.
but you know what I mean? Like, I don't focus on what the titles are if I'm not, like, a lead host or
Yeah.
putting the show together. And so when I saw this was summer school, it seemed like a weird thing of like, is this gonna be a 6-week like run? It seemed like a comic book thing, like
Yeah.
to win. Like, is this gonna be a smaller than a season? But then I looked and it looked like everything was gonna be called summer school no matter what. So
I'm not sure how I feel about it. Honestly, I know if it comes off really nitpicky, but I'm a little OCD when it comes to titles for television shows. I know how you said I don't really pay attention unless we're breaking it down, but me, I pay attention to titles, and it kind of bothers me when they change the format or the template of their titles. Like, shows do that a lot nowadays, where it used to be, you know, like, for example, there was a show I was watching a couple years ago that every title was connected to a philosopher. And then the next season, they just threw that away and just did generic titles. I'm like, well, that is messing up the entire thing. Why would you do that?
yeah, no, I agree. If it's your thing, I think it was Scrubs that went with my something, or
yeah.
our. It had like different words that had to do with the show, you know, and that was the title. Or like How I Met Your Mother, and some of the sitcoms have done that before. Where they keep that same kind of format,
Mm-hmm.
or 24. It's hour 11 and 12. It's like, all right, thank you. I know where we are.
Yeah.
It just, for summer school, it just seems like it's some weird, like, smaller offshoot of a season, not necessarily a full season arc.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. To me, it feels like they're trying to really grab at the CW demo now. Now that they're on the CW, like, hey, guys, look, we're a teen show. It's summer school.
You guys know what it's like. You went to summer school, right?
All
like,
you kids can relate to the bullshit of summer school, right?
Yeah.
It reminds me of like Steve Buscemi in that one movie where he goes back to high school and acts like a student.
Yes, I don't remember the movie, but I remember, what's up, young kids, or whatever.
My
he says.
fellow teenagers or something
Yes,
like
my
that.
fellow teenagers. And yeah, he's 70 years old.
I feel like when you're an older dude, don't try to relate.
No.
And like, I feel like who's the showrunner of this show? His name completely.
Jeff Johns?
Yeah, Jeff Johns. You're a cool guy, but you don't need to try to be hip and connect with the young audience. Just write a show.
Tucka. I'm hip.
I know there's a lot of people that do that, especially in Hollywood. I mean, there's that joke where, the 60 is the new 30 in Hollywood because no one wants to grow up and they always want to try to be hip. They want to try to connect to that young.
I have a TikTok.
It's exactly like that. Dude, in fact, I laugh when there are, 40-year-olds on TikTok. Like, you realize this is a site originally for
Small Asian people?
who are like to mime music
Yes.
or show their ass.
Yeah.
Because they're not quite brave enough yet to open up that OnlyFans account, so they want to try things off or try things out first on TikTok.
Nobody wants to watch you do the Charleston on TikTok, your 70-year-old dance with your 60-year-old body.
So fucked up. There's like 40-year-olds right now. Like, what the fuck you guys talk about? You guys are literally talking about Stargirl.
Exactly. We're the worst people to judge as I go to comic book conventions.
Hey, listen.
Else.
I like good television, and it doesn't matter if a show is targeted to a younger demo. If it's a good show, it's a good show.
Is there a demo for comic books?
That's a good question. I don't think there is any anymore.
At this point, like the demo for comic books is 18 to 49.
And that gets older as we age because it's our generation that grew up with comics and we continue to read comics. No other generation before us did that. A lot of the people before that were younger than us or older than us stopped reading comics at a certain age.
Yeah.
Our Generation X,
Never stopped.
We never stopped.
Well, so like, and this is totally off subject, but it kind of goes along with it, so bear with me. Me and Steve were talking about my daughter's about to turn 9 years old.
Steve is one of the hosts.
From Titans and, Circle of Jerks and been on a ton of shows.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about it, and then he's like, you realize Batman came out when we were 9. And I was like, wow, my daughter could be influenced at the age of 9 for something that she's going to take with her the rest of her life. But we've been dealing with this, like I said, since, we were young, and something like Batman came out when we were 9, and it has stuck with us this whole time. And, whether it was Superman before that, we were that age of like, we grew up with this. So why wouldn't we want this now? And you're right, that demo is going to keep growing because,
we're different. We are a culture that loves to specifically consume entertainment of all shapes, sizes, forms. And that goes for action figures. I mean, there is a whole thing going on, not just action figures, but toys.
Yeah.
And that goes right back. That is connected to the show. I mean, there is a market that continues to grow because the generation, again, our generation, as well as the younger generation, continue to consume these properties now that are putting out, ancillary products like toys and vinyl pops and all types of collectibles. So
we got to hit the people with the money. Guess who has the money at this point?
Yeah.
Not my daughter, but her dad does.
Exactly. So you're right. I mean, that was basically a very long way to justify why we are discussing Supergirl or Stargirl. Sorry, not Supergirl.
Yeah,
that's a shit show.
We cut that out, man. It got canceled.
Yeah. All right. So this episode introduced a few new elements while building out the bigger story and giving the audience, which I did like this, a closer look at some of the problems Courtney is dealing with this season. In the previous episode, we just saw her in go mode. That was pretty much it. We weren't quite sure why she was stuck on go mode. Now we see just why she was in that mode. She's struggling with her identity, as we had alluded to during our last discussion, and sense of purpose. And looking for villains everywhere is obviously how she's coping with the emotional fallout from last season. I mean, look what she's trying to deal with. The fact that she's not related to Starman, which was a huge hit to her, especially when she found out that not only was her father not Starman, a hero, but her father was a true piece of shit deadbeat. Like, in every way. He was the cliche deadbeat.
Yeah. With the staff selecting her, like, I'm trying to put myself as a teenage girl, as a man in his 40s. Wouldn't that be satisfying enough to know that I didn't have to be that the staff reacted to me, so I am something going on?
I think as a 40-year-old man, you have the ability to rationalize that. When you're dealing with a hormonal teenage girl who has tons of insecurities, no, you're not going to think rational. You're going to think,
I guess, because you consider last season she's coming where she was queen
yeah,
bee and everything else, and comes to this little school and they have nothing for her, and she's a nobody. So I guess so.
yeah. I mean, that's a good question, but it does create another question for me. Do we need to know truly why the staff chose her?
No,
You think it works as is?
I don't think you need to have an explanation, because all you're gonna get with an explanation is like somebody like me or you going, "That's stupid."
Yeah. So do you think the idea that she's pure of heart and she is superhero material, that works enough?
Yeah, that there's something inside her that drives the staff to react to her is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I don't need a justification. I don't need a 23andMe to find out that her father was, her great 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 grandfather was some war hero, and that's why she has, this gene inside her or something weird, that goes on that has the reaction. Because whatever the justification is not going to be good enough for people like us who do these breakdowns, who do these reviews, to actually buy that bullshit. So don't give me bullshit to buy. Just let me like make it up in my head, because whatever I make up in my head is probably going to be better than whatever you put in paper.
Yeah. And also, and we might have talked about this last season,
Mm-hmm.
there is something to be said about a character that is just a hero, like first generation hero, and it doesn't matter their parentage. Like, hey, listen, this person is great because that's who they are, and it doesn't matter what bloodline they are part of. I feel like there's more of a strength aspect to a character when they are just because they are.
Yeah, and I think that's good enough. I
Yeah.
don't think everybody has to be related,
No.
or
Yeah, no, you make a good point, because even like, yes, the justification, if they were to do it, it wouldn't satisfy. It would come off as silly, but also at the same time, a justification, that very word, feels like it would do a disservice to the character, to Stargirl. Like,
Yeah.
let us justify why this thing chose her.
and not Joe Schmo down the street.
Yeah.
And because it wouldn't make sense. And then who would you introduce as a character to have this exposition of like, this is why it reacts to you and everything else? It just seems like it'd be a big waste of time.
Yeah. No, I agree. I feel like the thing that Pat said was also pretty impactful to this whole identity crisis, when he said, and not just Courtney, but just a fantastic way to frame superheroes today, when he says superheroes help people. Like, it's about helping people, not fighting people. And I like that, because that is something that, and I know the dynamic of comics has changed a lot over the years, and because it's become mainstream, you have to create a lot of action and excitement, glitz and glam around these comic book properties. And because of that, we have lost sight of what a superhero is many times. In fact, I believe we discussed this in the Superman and Lois edition, where we said it's nice to see a hero save people. Like, that's actually a point in an episode.
Yeah.
Let me save people, because how often do we see characters in the MCU actually save people anymore? Or even in the recent DC stuff, we never actually see them save people. It's more large scale.
Yeah, it's the bigger thing. I think the only one we've seen do it lately was when Tony Stark sent Spider-Man back, just like, be the neighborhood Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And you're right. That's where the stories came from. That a superhero isn't about always hunting down the biggest, baddest dude in the world. Sometimes it is saving cats from trees, or doing that kind of shit, because that was the comic book thing. That was kind of like the 50s and 60s mainstay, even the 70s, till we got on to more bigger themes and things
Mature,
like that.
I guess. Mature storylines, I guess you can say.
Ish.
Yeah.
So you're right there, because I mean, we even talked a lot on some of our other shows throughout the network about there's that fine line between being a superhero and a vigilante.
Yeah.
And you don't see a lot of superheroes. Everybody's a vigilante, out for blood, out for justice, out for that, whatever. And I think Stargirl is probably the closest thing on like an active television show that we have, other than maybe you say Superman, but
Yeah.
Superman's still dealing with some major shit.
Yeah.
That is a true superhero.
Yeah.
That at this point in time, she can be that person that is like, the building is burning. What do we do? You don't see that shit anymore.
Yeah.
That used to be like the mainstay. To be like, oh my God, my daughter's up there, and they'd rescue the daughter and be like, oh, we forgot about the cat. Don't worry, I'll go get the cat.
Wasn't that the first thing Spider-Man did in the Tobey Maguire ones?
Yes,
I think he actually did.
When he's like throwing cats and shit onto the bouncy thing that the firemen have.
Yeah.
So you're right. There is not that superhero vibe there, and it was such a strong statement in this.
Yeah, and I definitely understand why we have veered away from that. It is a tired trope, but at the same time, it is nice to see when a showrunner or even a director remembers to remind us, like, hey, listen, we're going to deal with these large scale things because that's what people want to see. That's entertainment. That's where we are at today. As consumers of entertainment, but let me remind people what being a superhero really is about.
But no, that goes back to our original statement. What is the demo for this? That's the demo for people like my daughter when she was 6 watching Paw Patrol, because that's what fucking Paw Patrol did. They went and it's like, oh my gosh, we have to go rescue Mayor Humperdinck or whatever his name was, and his chicken, because that's what they do. 18 to 49-year-olds don't want to watch Mayor Humperdinck get rescued in Stargirl.
Yeah.
And so they're playing to the people that are watching it.
Yeah, it's good. And just in the way of character development, I mean, that was something that Courtney needed to hear as well, because she is looking for a fight everywhere. It keeps her distracted from, dealing with her own emotional issues due to her father not being Starman and her real father being a total D-bag. And this is where the new character works so well. Jenny, I believe, is her name.
Mm-hmm.
Green Lantern's daughter. Because at first you think they are trying to parallel their paths in order to show that Jenny is everything that Courtney wants to be. And yes, that is what they did. But there was more motivation or intent than just simply, hey, guys, look, at one kind of struggles being everything, and this one is everything. It was more about, realizing that they actually have more in common than maybe Courtney as well as the audience had originally thought. Courtney was looking for her father, and she's trying to find purpose. And then we realized that Jenny, although very good at things, has her own problems.
Yeah.
Looking for her brother, not knowing her father either. So it does work. I feel like it's smart. And that is an element that we discussed in our last episode about bringing in new characters that matter to the characters that are already established. I'm a big stickler for that because I feel like every season of almost every TV show always has to outdo itself. Well, now we have a new character, and then we have another new character,
Yeah.
and I'm left.
And then
wondering,
you have 10 people on the Wave Rider in Legends of Tomorrow, and you're going, why the fuck do we have 10 people?
Exactly.
We started with 6.
Exactly, and then you lose sight of the main or the core characters many times, or they sideline those characters because we have to deal with the hot new thing. And to me, it seems like this is more about strengthening Courtney's story, and that's how it has to be. This show is titled Stargirl. She has to always be at the center of everything. And no matter if we're dealing with a story pertaining to Rick or Beth or Yolanda or Pat, even at this point, although I would give Pat leeway because he is essentially the true co-star of this show and the sidekick.
Uh-huh.
But for the most part, everything needs to be about understanding Courtney and how and why she's doing certain things and where it's going. And if it's not, then those characters really don't belong.
Yeah.
And so far, it seems like that is what they're doing, because they did that last season and they're doing it this year.
And honestly, do you see the Green Lantern character being a mainstay or a one and done?
That's a good question. I had assumed she was going to be a mainstay, but then the way they had her exit in this episode, it makes me think we're not going to see her for a while.
Yeah, see, I have in my head I have her as a one and done type thing. Establish that there are lanterns out there and have her do her own thing, because I think that character alone is bigger than this city. Um,
Absolutely.
you know what I
A
mean?
little too big.
Yeah, like we've been.
Green Lantern. I mean, that's big.
Yeah, and you always wonder now that CW and the HBO Max has like a relationship, obviously, because I was joking with you that Kung Fu must be good because Kung Fu's on HBO Max now. That you wonder if like the Green Lantern Corps comes up, are they going to recognize her as a part of the Corp? You know,
You
is
mean in
she?
the upcoming TV show?
Yes, is
for
she going to be
HBO?
part of that? And where because Jeff Johns, I'm assuming, is probably going to be part of the producing staff of that also.
It seems like they're creating a little bit of a fishbowl, aren't they? That everyone's working on the same projects.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so, but like I said,
Would make sense.
as far as this story goes, I could see it help Courtney kind of grow as a character just with what we've seen so far from the Green Lantern, and then be like, I need to go find my family. I need to go find my brother. Blah blah blah. Gone.
Yeah. I'm actually okay with that because the character served his purpose for this episode and then bolted.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. Now bring her back when we need her. She's been established. She helped flesh out some ideas pertaining to Courtney, helping her understand that she's going through something that maybe she didn't want to notice, like her identity crisis, like dealing with her father, and then remove the character. And that's just fine. But I do have a question when it comes to the practicality of having a Green Lantern character. If they were to bring her as a permanent fixture, do you think they would be able to handle that type of character? Never mind the fact that we're dealing with an A-list character here, okay? I guess Stargirl's kind of an A-list character as well. Would you call her A-list?
No, I mean, you're talking Green Lantern is really part of the Justice League.
Well, he's like A+.
Yeah,
he is one of the biggest characters in comic books.
Because even though we're dealing with an offshoot of basically what would have been, Hal Jordan or I forgot whoever her
Alan Scott.
Yeah. The Earth Lantern, I forgot what the sector is called, but
69.
Yay.
What if it was? Earth is filled with douches, so we're gonna call this Sector 69.
Yes. But the fact of we are talking about that ring. I'm gonna use the ring. It is an A-list character, no matter who wears it in this sector.
Yeah.
And so I just don't see her being, again, a part of it. And we talked a little bit about it earlier with Green Lantern. You're also dealing with one of the most probably OP characters that they have, because that ring can damn near do anything.
Yeah, pretty
with
much.
strong enough will. And if you've watched anything that's not the Ryan Reynolds movie, you've seen it.
Oh, come on.
Going through the cartoons. Some people love Ryan Reynolds and will watch it. It's not a favorite movie amongst comic book people.
It is a very shitty movie.
But the fact is, that is a very OP character to have in this. I think the only thing that they would have going for it is that she does struggle with her power at this point. And so they couldn't have the whole, I can create guns and shields and bubbles that'll protect us, like you see in some of, of the other Green Lantern stuff.
I mean, when you think about, just look at last season as a way to compare. Imagine if Green Lantern was here and all their power, whoever it may be, and you really think Icicle would put up a fight against a Green Lantern?
Not one at full staff. I mean, if you looked at that initial battle scene, it took a whole Injustice League to take them out. So just to have one sit there, I think it would be a completely different story and everything else. And like you said, the Solomon Grundy character would get fucking swallowed by a bubble and carried away, because that's what, he would be entrapped by a lantern's power.
Okay, so we have Green Lantern, who we can all agree is definitely a potential for being OP. And we also know that the Flash is making an appearance. Okay, so we have two major characters now coming into Stargirl, essentially. And, yeah, Icicle was very low level when you compare him to the likes of Flash and a Green Lantern. But the villain this year is shaping up to be Eclipso, not necessarily Cynthia or the Injustice Society of America.
Mm-hmm.
Now we also have the introduction of the other villain, Richard Swift, but I can't imagine you introduce Eclipso and not have that character be the big swinging dick of villains. Unless they're slow playing
I
it.
think, dude,
Are they slow playing it?
I would slow play it. At this point, you always wonder how the writing of this goes. So if we go to the business side of this house here, we know Stargirl's approved for season 3 and 4.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. No, I don't know about 4, but I know season 2 and 3 were considered like almost like chapter 1, chapter 2.
But I think 4 was added on with CW not having a pilot season.
Oh, I can confirm that, but go ahead. I think you might be right.
Okay, but so when you know that I at least have this much time, and in all honesty, if you look at the ratings for the other shows, like Stargirl's doing better,
Mm-hmm.
and if Legends can somehow and Batwoman can get away with a .29.
Yeah.
I have some leeway here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So where I can actually do the slow play and play this out over time. I don't know if he's going to be the big bad this season, but I would almost
Eventually,
rather,
though.
I would
Yeah.
eventually. I would almost rather see the slow play, because I think with that we haven't got introduced the characters that could. I don't think she's mature enough to battle that character yet.
No, not at all.
And unless this ends like we have our horrible ending for season 2, where she ends on like the down, you
Right.
know?
Like Lost.
Yeah.
She got dealt with,
Yeah.
like cliffhanger style.
Yeah. That kind of thing, to where we have that, and then we could build her back up for season 3. Why do I do everything as the Star Wars trilogies, huh?
Well, that's a pretty much a classic template.
You know, she's lost right now. I don't think she's built to the fact that she could battle a main character like that yet.
No, you're right. You have a lot of great points. I was posing the question, but honestly, I hope Eclipso is not the main villain this season, and they do slow play, because Eclipso is huge. Like, just OP. So I'm hoping they just slow play it and then leave us with some type of serious cliffhanger that goes into the next season. But either way, I do like the Eclipso stuff quite a bit.
Of course, it's dark. It's right up your alley.
It is twisted as hell, man. It is so twisted. It is not how we had thought, though. Last episode, we had said that Cynthia is just straight up evil, and that's fine. But it looks like she might end up being a little more complicated, as she was last season. She was a character that didn't quite understand herself. She was also struggling with her identity and her purpose because of not having a mother, and her father having no faith in her, and she wanted to prove herself to her father. And it seems like we're going in that direction still because of that scene with the stepmom, and I like that. I'm glad that they did this, because I don't like villains unless it's something like Eclipso, that it's just straight up evil. So to see Cynthia still struggling with her moral compass, or lack of moral compass, I like that aspect. And I felt like that moment where her stepmom was obliterated by Eclipso, I felt like that was a very strong statement about her character and where she's at currently, because she didn't want her to die.
Yeah.
She's just a punk. She's a bully, and she's lashing out, and she's angry, and she's fucking with her stepmom. But I like when she said, I didn't want you to die. And now she sees her completely disintegrated. But that goes to the next aspect of Cynthia's character development here. She's being manipulated by Eclipso, obviously. She, in her arrogance, as we know even from last season, she's extremely arrogant and overconfident. And the same thing can be said this season, because in her mind, she thinks she can use Eclipso. And I'm sure Eclipso has convinced her that she can. But it looks like Eclipso is actually manipulating her I'm not sure to what end because this character is a little different from the comics, so it will be interesting to see where they go with this. But okay, so now we know based on this TV show that this person, which isn't too far off from many of the iterations in the comic books, they feed on sin. And it seems like Eclipso, number one, was attracted to Cynthia because she's filled with sin or the potential to be filled with sin. And now it seems like she's nudging, or I should say, he's nudging Cynthia to continue to do bad things in hopes to feed off her as well. But in an ultimate play. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like he seems to be influencing her to do bad things. Like the fact that, hey, let's do this, let's do that. And then the fact that he keeps calling her she, I don't know why. Eclipso manipulates the stepmom to try to lash out on Cynthia. And I think it was less about needing to feed on the stepmom and turn her. And I think it has more to do with Cynthia herself and how she would react to her stepmom's death.
See, and now that you explain like the background of the character, it makes me think that we might see it this year.
You think?
Especially with Stargirl and Green Lantern, and we talked about that whole superhero aspect, and the Green Lantern ring is powered by will.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's looking for sin and all these other things to power himself,
yeah,
two people that seem to be pure of heart would be the ultimate like Care Bear stare back at it.
Yeah. He might even want to turn them. Like I don't know how they're using this character, but maybe it's more of to feed on someone who was pure and he was able to turn them.
Man, there's a lot of things they could go, and
yeah,
if they're willing to go there and get like dark. To where something weird happens at some point that everybody looks at one of those two characters differently.
Yeah, I'm actually really intrigued with this entire aspect to see what happens.
We're intrigued by anything that we can't answer right away.
And that's why ultimately I know there are sticklers out there, comic book sticklers. Steve is one of them, one of the hosts on this network, who is really about the source material. And me, I'm like, listen, I read the source material and I love it. I don't need to see it in live action necessarily in its complete, form that was in the comic books. The way I always look at it.
Loosely based on a true story.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Give us, as long as you are, as a showrunner or director, whether it be a movie or TV show, as long as you, as the creator, understand the source material and what it means and what it represents and what it's trying to say, then you'll be able to adapt it for television in a way that's satisfying. And sometimes it could be completely different than the source material, but as long as you capture the heart or the essence,
yes,
it works.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's the heart of the matter. I don't need a page for page, frame by frame turn. And I know
because we already saw it. We already read it.
But it's so weird when we say that. If it's done right, we don't give a shit. If it's done like Hush did, like the cartoon.
That was so bad.
You're like, this is stupid. Like,
because I don't think the writer and director actually understood that story. That's why it sucks so bad. It's not because they took liberties. It's because they took liberties even with what it meant, what the story was trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah. But does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But you think about it and you're just like, there's things that I'm scared to watch because I love it so much that I don't want to.
Source material, you mean?
Yes. That I don't want to have it ruined, whether it's a book or a comic or anything else. I'm just like, ugh. Like going into Ready Player One, I was just like, oh, geez, I hope this is good. I really like the book. I haven't watched Long Halloween Part 1 and 2 because I love the comic. And I'm afraid that because DC has done this in the past where they take their liberties. But you're right. As long as the storyteller has the heart of it in there, and again, you know more about like the villain than I do. So I have zero expectations, and I think this is why, again, I've enjoyed this show so much, because I'm not coming into it going, for Stargirl, I need to see A, B, C, and D, and if they don't do it in that order, this show is stupid. And that's what you get when you get those A-list characters, is that if it's a Superman, if it's a Batman, if it's a Flash, I gotta see these things. And if they don't do it that way, if they don't do it my way, it's fucking wrong. And so,
But then you get the Flash that gives, Barry Allen the ability to make a lightsaber by using the Speed Force.
God, you saw that?
Oh my God, I've never seen something more stupid or horrible in my life.
I sent that clip to Steve, and I'm like, thank God I fucking was smart enough to pull the plug when I did.
Dude, that show just keeps getting worse and worse. Okay, so let's talk about the introduction of this new villain, and I'm going to put air quotes here. Richard Swift. I am glad that they introduced an adult villain because it did seem, and we had said this last year, like, is this going to start off as something really cool? Because we have adult villains, we have Pat Dugan, we have these adult superheroes running around, but then we have the Kid Squad. Is this going to eventually turn into just kids versus kids? And we both agreed that that would be really silly if you have kid villains and kid heroes. It would feel very contrived. Like you're specifically tailoring this so much for a young specific demo that it just comes off completely just insulting, pandering, and unrealistic in every way. Even dealing with a superhero show, it comes off as unrealistic.
Yeah.
And the fact that they introduced this character here, who is an adult villain, it throws a wrench in our original thoughts during last season that this is where we are going. Because even last episode, we saw that Cynthia was trying to put together the teenage villain squad. And a part of me groaned because I don't think I want to see teenage villains versus teenage heroes. It would be a little silly, don't you think?
Oh, 100%, because we know teenagers flip-flop friends left and right. So how do we know who's a villain and who's a hero?
Yeah.
Depending on the day, week, or what color she wore, I could hate this chick.
Yeah.
And yes, you're right. Dealing with too many like hormonal teenagers coming to this thing and being like, well, Stargirl is hot. Do I want to be a bad guy now? No, I don't. I want to get in her pants.
Yeah.
I think
look at Brainwave Jr. I mean, he didn't even want to, kill Yolanda because he, wanted to get after it again.
Yeah. When you bring in like adult type villains, especially with a bunch of kids that are showing powers of past superheroes, I think at least you have that established kind of understanding of what is going on with some of the older villains, that they're not just coming in like, Dateline NBC fucking predatory type things. Like you are
pedo villain.
Yeah, the pedo villain is like, why did you bring beer and cake and condoms to this girl's house?
Yeah, I'm the cool villain. Have you heard of the cool mom? Where I'm the cool villain.
Yeah. You just want her to have safe sex and fucking get her some cake. It's
What's
her
up, my
birthday.
fellow teenagers?
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Exactly. Like and also I don't want fucking villains becoming teachers.
Yeah.
Showing up again.
Yeah.
So
yes, the introduction of this adult villain was definitely a welcome. Now, this character is Shade, which was mentioned, I believe, last season. And according to Pat, he is the last unaccounted for member of the Injustice Society. Now, the reason why I say air quotes, I use air quotes and say villain, he also is a reformed villain in the comic books. So we'll see. And he actually becomes an ally of Starman.
in what comic?
It is a new 52 storyline.
Okay.
And I like to pretend those don't exist.
So does DC.
I believe it's a new 52. I could be wrong about
Okay.
that, but I will have facts on that during our next discussion.
Okay.
But I think it might be a new 52 thing. I'm not quite sure. Either way, we will see. I did like the character quite a bit. I hate that I'm always drawn to DC villains every single time. Weren't we rooting for the DC villains last year too?
We always root for villains. That's who we are.
The Gambler was awesome last year when he was playing Timber while he was hacking the satellites.
The bottom line is villains make shows.
It's true. You gotta have a good villain.
Because if not, like the superheroes are nothing. And so that I think that's why we always root for good villains when they come up. And the fact was that this guy was excellent. And like you said, I didn't know he was a reformed villain until you told me when I came to the studio today. I really feel like we were joking that we need blank cards to go pass out to people saying, I will find you, because that was smooth as fuck.
Yeah,
Um,
that's gangster.
yeah, like,
I want some blank cards now. Like, hey, there's still contact information. It's okay. I'll find you.
I'll make sure next time Comic-Con comes around, I have blank cards to pass out that I represent the network with.
That is so good. But yeah, I mean, it just little things like that make shows that much better and make characters that much better, because it does pique your interest about this guy. Like, what is he about? He's kind of cool. He's kind of laid back. He doesn't really have a care in the world. You can tell he's a little bit of an elitist. He doesn't really like the town, but he pretends to like it.
I like it until I get what I want out of it. Then I'm fucking out of here.
Yeah, so his whole thing was what? He was trying to collect Zarek's magic stash
Yeah.
from last year. So that's going to be his game plan, it seems like, for this year.
And what I did like about it is that it also brought Amy Smart's character into a storyline without being forced.
Yeah.
Because you always wonder what the storyline is going to be to keep those other characters around. It can't be the fact that we ruined her camping trip, or these other things that Pat has to have a separate storyline and she has to have her separate storyline. And, when they all, like you said, relate around Stargirl, it all makes sense. This isn't her going to this small town again, trying to find her way. She's found her way in this small town.
Yeah.
And now fucking trouble has come to her doorstep, and then she can relay the message back to Pat and her daughter to help figure it out, that there's somebody looking for this stuff.
So this show is doing things a little differently in the way of action. Last season, I want to say we had a couple big action sequences early on in the first episode, which understandably, it's the pilot and you got to get people interested, right? Show them what you can do. But so far, we have not had any of those big, glitzy, well-crafted visual effects sequence like we had last season. Now, do you think that has everything to do with the story and what they're trying to do? Trying to build, the idea that this town is better off now, that Stargirl and her team was able to save the town, and if they were to jump right into this big old glitzy action scene, it would kind of undermine their accomplishments from last year? Or do you think it's more of a practical, real-world issue? Do you think it's a budgetary issue?
Okay.
Are they trying to go smaller scale because of the CW budget?
It is one of those things that I put on my 500 plus episodes of CW.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, I always know that, like, when I used to hear in The Flash that there was a King Shark episode coming up, I'm like, oh, we're getting budget-saving episodes.
Yeah.
At this point, I don't believe that.
Okay.
Because it's not like we've had the opportunity to have those big glitzy scenes that we did have last year, whether it was a fight here or there. I mean, we did have episode 1. We did have a Lantern staff fight.
That's true.
That was pretty epic, and that was the only thing that we had established at this point. They did some things this week with the flamethrower on the robot, and then the controlling of the Lantern ring. So there were some things there. I just don't think we've had the opportunity for them to have that type of scene yet.
Yeah.
I don't think it is the bullshit like I said, they used to do in The Flash.
Or Legends of Tomorrow, where they don't even have,
Yeah, they don't suit up at all. They
Yeah.
don't do these things because they're doing it for budget reasons, because we know something bigger is coming towards the end. I don't think that's
Okay.
it. Because I have
So this is all about story then?
Yeah, in my head, yes.
Okay.
Like, that's the way I'm playing it at this point, mainly because the story is there. And like I said, we haven't had some big epic fight scene that ended up being like a lights out fight scene or something like that they were trying to hide stuff. If it was that kind of thing, I'd be like, okay, we're saving budget for something big.
Yeah, that's true. That makes a lot of sense, and I would agree. So Rick is feeding the beast. I'm wondering where this is going. I mean, did they really need to remind us this episode that he's still doing that? I'm not sure. So hopefully soon we'll find out what exactly is going on. Now, I understand from a motivational aspect why they're doing this for the character we talked about during our last episode. There's a lot of reflection going on, guilt pertaining to possibly his anger almost getting the best of him. Rick, I'm talking about. And the whole mirror, he's beating the monster and killing this monster, and he realizes that he is the monster. So all of that is just great. But where does this go from here? Does Solomon Grundy join in the fight eventually? I mean, we know you are a Solomon Grundy fan. I don't know if that's too strong to say that, but I know you are a Batman guy, and
Yeah.
Solomon Grundy is a big Batman villain. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
Okay. So what do we do with him? Is he ever an anti-hero? Does he ever do good things?
I've never really thought of him as being a anti-hero or associated on a good side.
Do you have empathy for his character ever in the comics?
I'm trying to remember if I've read anything where we've had that.
Not really, huh?
No,
Because I've read a few things as well.
Because
And I've never
short
seen
of
that.
being like, I think a Suicide Squad member a couple times.
Okay.
But
So it's not completely a foreign idea then.
No, but other than that, it's always been on the bad side of villains when it comes to who he's messing with and everything else. So I don't know.
Maybe he helps in the fight against Eclipso eventually.
Or Eclipso turns him.
Oh, yeah.
That's
That's true. I mean, because look at the players they're lining up. Okay, Lantern, Flash, Eclipso, Solomon Grundy. Those are big players already right there. And who knows what else we have in store. So the more we keep moving through this season and we go back to the interview with... Why do I keep forgetting his name?
Johns.
Jeff Johns. Jesus,
I'll
I've
just
never
keep throwing
forgot
it
his
in
name.
every time you pause.
Now I keep forgetting his name. And we go back to the interview with Jeff Johns, and we know that he has this, at least we know for sure, a 2-season storyline planned. It's interesting to see where this is going because a lot of it does feel like it's a slow play. Like he's dropping breadcrumbs or moving chess pieces into place, and they may not be as relevant as we may think they will be in this season alone. And I kind of like that because do TV shows do that anymore? They don't.
Mm-mm.
Remember back in, I want to say, the mid-2000s when the golden age of television first started getting going, and you would have season cliffhangers. You'd have these big-ass cliffhangers. You'd have the immediate wrap-up. You would give your audience closure, but then you had that fucking cliffhanger.
And the cliffhangers.
We don't do those anymore.
No, you don't. You don't see that as often.
Very rarely.
It's not. And I think it's always because everybody's worried about getting canceled or everything else. I mean, the TV shows have changed so much that it's like if we don't make them, the ability to close out a season, is it going to work? I'm trying to think of like the biggest like cliffhanger that
I also know there's a lot of babies out there nowadays who complain about cliffhangers. Like a lot of people did not grow up. People who are watching TV nowadays, the younger demos, they did not grow up watching TV where they used to have those cliffhangers. And I see a lot of complaints when people do cliffhangers, and audiences are like, no.
So let's think of the cliffhanger scenario here. If we go with shows like Lost or like Manifest, that got shit canned on NBC after having like huge numbers on Netflix once it got released. That you never really got ends the stories, or the story didn't work out, and I think that's what people are afraid of. It's the failure.
Yeah, they want to finish their story.
Because next thing you know, you're Andrew Kreisberg and you get fired off of Supergirl for making porno jokes. And
is that for real?
I just made that up.
Oh, I was like, oh, geez.
I know the Titans showrunner got in trouble for inappropriate comments that WB didn't find bad, but somebody complained about him. But the fact is, imagine that. Imagine Titans right now and everything that they're doing on that show. That if he got thrown off before he could complete his vision of what he wanted,
Yeah.
so fuck it. I'm gonna complete my vision as fast as I can, and that way I don't have to worry about it. It's the same
Before
reason.
those past tweets come and haunt me.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not the Jeopardy host who showed up on a podcast
Oh.
7 years ago and made one bad comment, and lose my job. That's the reality of the situation. Look, I know I'm not going to become a president of anything, not a PTA, not of anything, because of everything I've ever said on this radio. So I'm perfectly fine with it. But the fact is, like, if you told me today, like, hey, Circle of Jerks might be done, I'm like, shit, I got to pull out all the big guns, anything that I've ever planned to do it now, because I might be gone tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that's a good argument. I can't disagree.
I mean, it
makes sense.
It's the same reason that everybody pulls out the big guns right away. Why you get Reverse Flash, why you get the big villains right off the bat. Think about how Arrow got screwed over because they took Deathstroke away. After they got rid of the Dark Archer, they went to Deathstroke, and you're thinking, cool, we're gonna have this long run thing. Then WB said no. So you gotta do it. You gotta do it now. And
Do it now.
that could have ended the cliffhanger type television scenarios that we're so used to and loved.
That's definitely a possibility. Okay, so live read. We're not going to go to a full break because we are closing in on our hour. So please head over to patreon.com/RaymanDigital. Help us stay on the air by pledging to our Patreon page. We are a very small indie network with no corporate backing. And the only way we can continue to put out high-quality content is by the support of our listeners. We have various tiers available with different pricing structures, and each comes with additional content. So please, help us out. Patreon.com/RaymanDigital. Also, be sure to go to our iTunes and rate. Give us a 5-star rating. We need those.
Yeah, do it, please.
Yeah.
Tell me how wonderful I am.
Or you hate us, but also tell
Rate
us
us.
you hate us, but give us that 5-star rating.
Yeah, well, that's how most of my ratings go on my shows.
Bobby likes to be roasted, I heard. So,
yeah.
you can roast him on a review if you want.
Or put my phone number on Reddit.
Oh, Jesus. Probably should have said that because now it's going to pop up repeatedly. All right. Oh. This is going to come back to haunt us, that comment you just made.
Yeah, whatever.
All right. So let's move into final thoughts. You went first last time. No, I did. Why don't you start us off?
I think it's a strong building episode. I don't think we need like some big reveal. How many episodes do we have this season?
I believe 13.
13. All right. So I think we're getting there. We're establishing characters where everybody is. It's how you do a proper filler episode without actually making it feel like a filler episode because you're progressing characters.
Yeah, give us a little bit.
Yeah, just enough of everybody to kind of produce it. The I know I had some complaints about the visuals, and it might have been just me having like
During the last episode?
CW like backlash, like not backlash, but
Fears. Yeah.
But the fact is, when they went to more darker scenes, it still looks cinematic to me.
I love the color grading on this show.
Yeah,
it looks good.
It looked really good, but again, I like how they've established something for every character to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give it a 79.
Okay, so that's a big jump from last episode.
What did I give last one?
70.
Yeah.
So good.
Again, it could have been a fear episode.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to give this episode an 85. I did think it was a very strong addition to the season. Only 2 episodes in, and they are definitely building up all the tension. And I like that we had an entire hour discussion on what ifs. Like, what if they do this? Can they do this? And when we have conversations like that, that usually is a clue that we're dealing with a show that's written well. Because it's not like, why did they do this? What are they doing?
Fuck them for writing this way. Yes.
Yeah, it's the different type of tone. Same questions, but a different tone. And I definitely am enjoying this show.
Yeah.
I hope people find this show. I don't know where the ratings are at, and I honestly don't think CW even cares about that stuff anymore, or else they would be canceling shows all the time because many of their shows have like 250,000 people watching it. So I do hope people find the show though, because every time I ask people, and maybe it's just our circles, we're much older. Maybe they just figure Stargirl is for kids. But listen, if you're listening to DC and RMD because you listen to our shows, but you don't watch Stargirl, which, believe it or not, there are people that do that. They just like listen to our podcast. You should be watching Stargirl. It's a very well-made show, and I don't see it falling apart at this point. I think we're safe with the whole CW curse with this show. It feels like its own thing, its own little pocket universe, if you will.
Yeah.
All right, so this does bring us to the end of our discussion. I want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
And good night.